Welcome to Washington in Focus. I'm Olympia correspondent Carlene Johnson with the Center Square, and joining me is my colleague, investigative reporter for the Center Square, TJ Martinell. TJ, you did kind of a deep dive on where the heck all those Climate Commitment Act dollars are going and how those of us paying for higher prices at the pump might actually be funding it twice. It seems like, from reading your article. Elaborate.
So what was interesting about this is there's the direct impacts of the law on people who are in industries that emit carbon and have to go participate in the carbon auction. What also is happening, though, is that in response, many people have argued it's raising gas prices because they're passing the costs on to consumers. And so I was kind of interested in that when I was looking at how the money was actually being spent. I did a story prior where I looked at, the type of projects and how many of them were reducing carbon emissions, and roughly around 90% of them don't have any impact on carbon emissions. So then I was thinking, what is it actually funding? And so I started breaking things down. And what I found out, I was looking at the top 10 most expensive projects, and I was shocked to discover that more than half of them were transit projects. A significant chunk of the top 10 most expensive projects were concerning transit. And in fact, the most expensive CCA project and this is for the fiscal year 2024, the most expensive was a $66 million project in Seattle for supporting bus services. So then I started breaking down because there's different accounts. There's three main accounts for the CCA revenue that it's deposited into after the quarterly carbon auctions. And then there's four different sub-accounts that are in two of those main accounts. One of those sub-accounts is for transit related projects. So when you go download all the Excel spreadsheet that Ecology has on the website showing all this stuff, you can specifically isolate just the money projects that were that involved money from that account, the transit account. And I found that it was, I think, 45% of all spending came from that account. So we're pretty much half of the CCA money is being spent on transit. Now, how that relates to the gas price increase is this. Our state gas tax is constitutionally protected. When it's deposited into the motor vehicles account, under an amendment to the Constitution, Amendment 18, that money cannot be spent on anything except state highway projects. As gas tax revenue has been, stagnating and is expected to decline, they've been looking at a road usage charge. And one of the debates over that is whether or not the revenue should be more flexible, right? And people are arguing, well, we want it to be like the gas tax, where the money is spent only on highway projects and maintenance, preservation, all that stuff. Well, in a way, if the CCA is impacting gas prices, Washington drivers and anybody who pays at the gas pump in the state, they are in fact paying an indirect gas tax that is funding transit.
Yes, and right after it took effect, didn't gas prices shot up anywhere? I mean, the debate is ongoing, right? But by many measures, it went up as much as 50 cents, like immediately, and kind of stayed there a long time.
Yeah, and that's been the argument of different organizations like the Washington Policy Center and others that are affected by this. And as of right now, who knows when it can change? But I have not received any criticism or complaints or critiques of the article's conclusions or the argument that drivers may be paying an indirect gas tax to fund transit. So I think I crunched the numbers correctly, but I did a lot of double checking, because I wasn't expecting it to be so I don't want to say lopsided, but where it's not spread out over different projects. And I'm still doing investigative work into other types of projects that are being funded, but we kind of know now what the CCA is primarily funding is it's transit, and most of the projects, overwhelmingly, the amount of money that they're spending on these projects is not directed towards carbon emissions.
So, but I would venture a guess that CCA supporters would make the argument that, oh, well, that's good. We're spending like half of the CCA profits on transit to get people out of their cars. I mean, that's the big push, right? Like, we don't want all those, combustion engines out there polluting the environment. So they're going to say, oh, well, that's a good thing. We're spending $66 million. And you said on that Seattle transit project. Do you know anything more about that one specifically, by the way?
No. And some of the projects are actually kind of vague. They don't really go into much detail. So, they can make that argument. Somebody would probably, another person could retort, the CCA is intended to reduce carbon emissions so that we can meet statewide emission reduction goals, and it's not doing that. And also, if you want to have something specifically for funding transit, that should be a transportation style funding mechanism, not an environmental. Transit should be funded as a transportation thing, not an environmental component, because for various reasons. So that's the side argument, but it's interesting how one could argue that it's allowed the state to bypass the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, protecting the gas tax revenue by having an indirect gas tax and then allowing them to use it on things like transit. And also a certain amount of revenue is dedicated to the carbon emission reduction account, but there's, unlike other types of priorities that's including environmental justice, there's no minimum amount of money that needs to be spent on carbon reduction. So there's no legal mandate to say, hey, during a fiscal year, 20% of all revenue spent money spent from these accounts has to be towards carbon reduction.
And we don't really know the overall emission reduction numbers, right? I mean, you've got that Washington Policy Center sued, I think it was a month or so ago, right? Sued the Department of Ecology saying, you and former Governor Inslee, you're required to, list these at least annually. And they went, 3-4 years without giving you any numbers. So it's like Inslee's whole agenda to protect the climate, but we didn't have any actual numbers to prove that it's all working.
Well, and that's the problem, because the CCA, the project spending, one of the things that they do is ecology reports if it had an impact on carbon emissions. And then if so, it says how many metric tons were reduced. I crunched the numbers, and in the fiscal year 2024, they reduced statewide carbon emissions by 0.3%. The problem is I have to use a figure that's from several years ago because that's the latest I have. So, who knows what's happened since. And actually, the Washington Policy Center put out a report, I believe in February, talking about how carbon emissions in the state have been increasing rather than decreasing. And they've set all these goals to reduce it. And I think the Policy Center said that they'd have to have numerous COVID era lockdowns.
I recall that article. Yeah.
Right. In order to meet these goals. And obviously,
in other words, no drivers on the road.
Yeah. You literally have to have people not driving on the road at all and have that for a long time. At the same time, that's going to be a problem for economic growth, which they're going to, and revenue, which they're going to need for their budget shortfall. So yeah, I'm still looking into stuff, but that's pretty much the gist of it, is that people, when they go to fill up their car or whatever that uses gasoline at the gas station, the price, a portion of that price is the result of them funding transit. That's not the official thing. That's not the official thing you're going to see on paper, but that is the de facto outcome, is they're paying at the pump to fund transit.
And then let me ask you, there was another auction this week or in the last few days. So we've got new numbers, which could translate into even higher prices at the pump. I dare even ask, but you're the numbers guys. So give it to us.
Well, I think it was, they're thinking it's going to increase. So I don't want to say increase, but it's going to add 40 cents to every, the price per gallon. And for people who aren't aware, our state gas tax, I believe, is 49 cents. And then on top of that, you have the federal gas tax. So you're paying well over $1 out of every gallon.
Mm-hmm. Like,
let's say it's $4 a gallon. Well, without those taxes, it would be $3. And that's just those things alone. There could be other factors involved, other state regulations, other federal regulations that are adding to the price. And so, there's other types of environmental policies related to fuel that could also cause the price to go up even further. But that's a separate issue from the CCA.
Wow. You think about that, $1 a difference for every gallon. If you've got, a 12-gallon tank that you're filling up a couple of times a week, you're talking about a difference of, $12 every time, $24 a week, over $100 a month. And that's just that's a one vehicle house, in the house. You've got 2 or 3 vehicles in your home. You're talking about, hundreds of dollar difference every single month.
Yeah. And what it also does is it reduces the impact of buying a higher fuel efficiency car, because you may be getting more mileage per gallon, but you're paying more per gallon now. So it's sort of it's undermining the benefits of getting a car that, gets 30 miles per gallon instead of 20 when you have to pay an extra $1 per gallon. So, and it also, what it's also doing is it's putting a huge burden on people who drive older cars that are not as fuel efficient.
Yeah.
If you live in a rural, or you're involved in an industry, or you have a lifestyle where you drive a car that gets low gas mileage, like a truck or some sort of large vehicle, every time price increases hurt you the most, because either you get low gas mileage, so you have to fuel up more often, or you consume a lot of fuel just because of driving. So it's not going to have as much of an impact, obviously, on people who live in urban areas and can get around without having to drive as much, to get to work or where they want to go in life. They can take transit, or they just don't have to drive very far. But if you live in an area where you got to drive 20 miles just to get to basic amenities, that's going to hurt you the most.
I know a guy who lives way out there yonder.
Never heard of him.
I never heard of him. No, I know our readers. I know the podcast viewers know who you are. TJ Martinell, our investigative reporter for the Center Square. Thank you for staying on top of this. And, I know this has been an issue that you've been so intimately covering for the last couple of years, and I know you will continue to. And since you're the numbers guy, I'm glad it's you, not me. So there's that. Thank you again. This has been Washington in Focus.